Otto Shankar, an auto rickshaw driver from Chennai, became the city's most notorious criminal between the 1970s and 80s. What makes a person commit murders again and again? Is it the society which leads to the darkness in the corners of that person? Or is it just pure choice? An evil disguised as opportunity. Today, let's dive deep into the science behind a serial killer following the Otto Shankar case. This video isn't about blood and bodies. It's about the biology of cruelty, the psychology of power, and the sociology of silence. But before talking about the science behind a killer's mind, let's talk about the world that built it. 1970s Chennai, urban migration, poverty, illegal liquor, underground sex trade. For some, this chaos came as an opportunity to learn something and to grow along with it. But for the others, it was a playground full of power where they could do anything. And Gauri Shankar, a simple auto driver, found his way into power and lost himself in the process. When social systems fail, illegal societies create alternative hierarchies. Criminologists call this the strain theory, which basically means that when legit roads to success are blocked, you take illegitimate ways to reach that power. And Shankar's progression from a driver to a bootlegger to a pimp to a murderer shows a textbook social escalation in criminology. Now let's talk a little about the patterns of killing, or the behavioral science behind a killer's mind. Serial killers follow patterns, not always of ritual but of reason. By that I mean they wouldn't have the same way to kill someone, but they might have the same reason to kill someone. To understand Shankar, scientists today would use something called criminal profiling, which means looking at how, when, and why he killed someone. There are a few terms and definitions in behavioral psychology that take you straight into the mind of a serial killer. I am no psychologist, but let me explain them to you in the most layman's way possible. First comes organized offenders traits, which basically means planning crimes and then choosing victims correctly so that their crime does not get revealed to the general public, and then disposing the evidence after performing the crime. And guess what they're all signs of? They're all signs of organization or neatness. Then comes another term called power control motivation. Most serial offenders seek control, not chaos. So, killing becomes an act of gaining dominance that they once lacked in life. Another term would be operant conditioning, which basically means that repeated success without punishment reinforces criminal behavior. A kind of psychological feedback loop. So each time a serial killer gets away with a crime, their brain learns that crime equals control and control equals safety. To explain it in the easiest way possible, think of your brain as a car. The amygdala is the operator of emotion and the prefrontal cortex is the brake. In a psychopath's brain, the brake parts are worn out. Now let's blend this psychopathic spectrum with Shankar. He displayed traits associated with something called antisocial personality disorder, also abbreviated as ASPD, which basically means that he showed signs of manipulativeness. He had lack of remorse and had a superficial charm. One thing that you should know is not every person with ASPD is violent, but those combined with sadistic traits or narcissism usually are. Now, what is the neuroscience behind a killer's brain? Scientists have peered inside the brains of convicted serial killers through MRI or PET scans, and their findings are both fascinating and disturbing. The neurological findings showed lower activity in prefrontal cortex, leading to low impulse rate. It also showed overactive amygdala, which basically means heightened aggression or fearlessness. Another finding was defective mirror neuron, because of which they showed lack of emotional empathy or emotional resonance. There were also neurological imbalances in serotonin and dopamine, as a result of which the guilt factor in their life reduced by a lot and they seeked thrill in their life. We can't scan Shankar's brain, right? But we can analyze his behavior. He showed impulse cruelty, calculated control, and lack of remorse. It fits right into the definition of what scientists now define as psychopathic behavior. But how does the environment shape this violence? Neuroscience alone can't make a person murderer. A violent mind needs a violent world. The prime environment and epigenetic that leads to a person becoming a serial killer include childhood neglection, abuse, or exposure to violence. All of this leads to gene expression, which is basically called epigenetic trauma. Another bad environment would be bad peer influence or normalization of violence in underground economies. In Shankar's case, the culture of violence, corrupt policing, and glamorization of local gangs created a perfect environment where violence was both useful and invisible. Now let's talk a little about the science of deception, the lies, and not accepting the crime. After his arrest, Shankar naturally denied all the allegations. And then later on, after a deep investigation, he finally confessed. Psychologists call it mask of sanity, the ability to lie flawlessly while reading others' emotions like a script. But what is the cognitive science behind lying? Functional MRI studies show that deception activates prefrontal cortex as the brain works harder to suppress the truth. So chronic liars exhibit lower anxiety levels while lying. Their brain's alarm system, also known as the limbic system, doesn't trigger guilt. In the late 1980s, India didn't have the tools to study microexpressions or voice analysis. This investigation relied on human intuition, not neuroscience. Yet, even intuition is a form of primitive science. Science eventually caught up not with his mind, but with his mistakes. Forensics came into the picture, and the techniques used were fingerprint analysis to analyze any possessions or connections, or soil forensics, which basically meant matching the earth from burial site to different vehicles. Another example of forensic report would be autopsy evidence. It helps you determine the timing and cause of death through decomposition marks. If the case happened today, DNA profiling, geographic profiling, and digital data profiling could have helped us track him way earlier than when we actually did. So Shankar's case isn't just a story of crime. It is a mirror showing how biology, psychology, and society intertwine. Neuroscience shows us wiring, psychology shows us the motive, sociology shows us the opportunity, and together they form the map of a murderer's mind. But here's the lesson: when science understands evil, it doesn't justify it, it disarms it. Beware, because these serial killers are all around you. And while you're doing that, also don't forget to like, follow, and share this video, and to subscribe to my channel, because I keep on coming to you throughout the week and with these long videos on the weekend. And to not miss any updates, also press the bell icon. Until the next week, bye bye, have a good life, and see you.